I'm sure you're wondering exactly what is going on in this scene. How can water glow when moved around? Well, it doesn't. But the bacteria that are present in the water can glow. Under certain conditions, they can exhibit a phenomenon called bioluminescence. For a frame of reference and to rule out any preconceptions about movie special effects, here's a real-life video of bioluminescence occurring in the ocean.
Oh my God!
What you're looking at in this image is a flask of a liquid culture of Vibrio fischeri. This bacterium has a special property so that it makes light, so it makes bioluminescence like fireflies make light. Nothing is happening to the cells in this liquid culture. The picture was taken by plainly turning off the lights in a room. The interesting aspect of these glowing bacteria is not simply that the bacteria made light, but when the bacteria made light. When the bacteria were alone or individual, they did not emit any light. However, when the bacteria were together and grew to a certain amount of cells, all of the bacteria emitted light simultaneously. Now this poses the question, how can bacteria tell the difference between times when they're alone and times when they're not, and then communally do something together? Research has shown that these bacteria actually communicate or talk to each other through a chemical language. Let's think about this in terms of cell reactions. Looking at an individual bacterial cell, like I said before, it does not emit any light. It does, however, secrete small molecules like hormones that microscopically look like small red triangles. When the bacteria is alone, the molecule simply will float away from the cell and no light will be created. However, when the bacteria are all around each other, they are all creating these tiny molecules together and essentially can understand the number of cells around itself based on the concentration of molecules around them. When the amount of these secreted molecules reaches a certain amount, bacteria will recognize that molecule and all the bacteria will turn on light in synchrony. This is how bioluminescence works. This phenomenon is essentially an example of quorum sensing, and quorum sensing is most simply defined as the regulation of gene expression in response to changes in the cell population density. While this may sound rather simple, it is actually very complicated and highly researched as of today. Now that we've talked about one of the interesting ways in which quorum sensing can be seen, I want to tell you more about the quorum sensing specifically. What's quorum sensing and how do bacteria talk to each other? Well, the discovery that bacteria are able to communicate with each other changed our general perception of many simple organisms inhabiting our world. Instead of language, bacteria use signaling molecules which are released into the environment. As well as releasing the signaling molecules, bacteria also are able to measure the number of molecules within a population. Nowadays, we use the term quorum sensing to describe the phenomenon where the accumulation of signaling molecules enable a single cell to sense the number of bacteria around it. In the natural environment, there are many different bacteria living together which use various classes of signaling molecules. As they employ different languages, they cannot necessarily talk to all other bacteria. Today, several quorum sensing systems are intensively studied in various organisms such as marine bacteria and several pathogenic bacteria. So, why do bacteria talk to each other? Well, quorum sensing enables bacteria to coordinate their behavior. As environmental conditions often change rapidly, bacteria need to respond quickly in order to survive. These responses include adaptation to availability of nutrients, defense against other microorganisms which may compete for the same nutrients, and the avoidance of toxic compounds potentially dangerous for the bacteria. It is very important for pathogenic bacteria during the infection of a host to coordinate their virulence in order to escape the immune response of the host in order to be able to establish a successful infection. What are the benefits of quorum sensing research? Quorum sensing research has many potential applications. Most of these involve controlling bacteria by interfering with their signaling systems. For example, many bacteria rely on quorum sensing to control the expression of the genes which cause disease. If we can block the quorum sensing systems, we may be able to prevent these bacteria from being dangerous. This brings me to the heart of my TED Talk. The reason that I believe you must know what quorum sensing is because it is going on inside and outside of every one of you and has been for years and years. Now that the science community is becoming aware of this phenomenon has the capacity to completely alter the way scientists view cells and cell interactions. Now, I'm going to talk about something that will seem a bit abstract, but if you wait and listen, I promise it will all connect. Let's talk about World War II. This entire war was coordinated based on communications between both the Allied powers and the Axis powers. In World War II, communications for the Allied powers were meant to stay within the boundary of the Allied powers because they did not want this knowledge to fall into enemy hands, and vice versa for the Axis powers. However, if the Allied powers were able to intercept enemy communications or messages, then they would effectively be able to know exactly what the Axis powers were planning, and could then launch a preemptive strike in response to their plans. Basically, the Allied powers would be able to stop an attack before it even was in motion, so that the impact it would have was lessened or even completely negated. Now, let's think about this in relation to quorum sensing. Diseases within the body can be analogous to the nature of World War II. In the body, however, the war is going on between the autoimmune system and bacterial viruses. The communication that occurs is within the bacteria and within the immunal cells. Bacteria interact as to determine how they're going to attack the body's immune system, and the autoimmune system interacts with its cells to determine how to prevent or shield the body from infection. Understanding or intercepting these communications between said bacterial viral cells would essentially allow us to figure out what will happen to the autoimmune system before it even occurs. This is synonymous to intercepting enemy communications. Having knowledge of communications between bacterial cells would allow us to create countermeasures for bacterial infection. Ultimately, with further study of quorum sensing in bacteria, we will better understand their patterns of communication and can apply this to medicine. Understanding the microscopic conversations that are constantly occurring will open up a new world of communication for us to study and use to our benefit.